Somewhere deep inside you, there is a small voice. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, but it aches. A gentle ache, like the kind that sits in your chest when you long for something you can't name. That voice often appears in the quiet moments. When the world is still. When you're lying awake at night wondering why, after all this time, you still feel not enough. Why love feels so far away. Why the people who were supposed to make you feel safe made you feel invisible instead. And in that space, a truth begins to stir. You didn't lose connection with yourself, you were taught to abandon it. Taught to silence your needs. To hide your sensitivity. To become what others expected instead of who you truly were. But beneath all that, beneath the roles, the perfectionism, the people-pleasing, your inner child still breathes. She hasn't disappeared. She's been waiting. Waiting for you to come back. Not to rescue her, but to remember her. Because she is not broken. She is your beginning. In the language of the soul, the child is not just a memory, it's a living presence. And if you close your eyes, you can feel her. Maybe she's sitting in a corner, arms wrapped around her knees. Maybe she's looking at you with wide, questioning eyes. Or maybe, she's turned away, no longer sure she can trust you. That's okay. You haven't failed her. You've simply forgotten how to hear her. But she remembers. She remembers every time you pushed your feelings down to survive. Every time you swallowed your truth to keep the peace. Every time you begged for affection that never came. And now, she's asking, quietly, gently, is it safe to be seen yet? That's what this journey is. Not a heroic return, but a sacred listening. A reconnection. A soft, steady hand extended into the past, saying, I see you now. I hear you. And I'm not going anywhere. Carl Jung once said that nothing influences a child's life more than the unlived life of the parent. What was unhealed in them becomes what is unspoken in us. Their silence becomes our anxiety. Their emotional absence becomes our self-doubt. And somewhere along the way, we mistake adaptation for love. We learn to read moods instead of receiving affection. We become hyper-aware, vigilant, intuitive not because it's a gift, but because it was a survival strategy. And in that process, the true self, the wild, free, radiant inner child, slowly fades behind the mask of who we had to become. That mask may have helped you survive your childhood, but it is too heavy to carry into your healing. So now, we begin the process of laying it down. Gently. Lovingly. Not with blame, but with honesty. Because healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means returning to the place where you abandoned yourself, and choosing, this time, not to leave. The wounded inner child isn't just a part of your history. She's the emotional core of your present. She's the part of you that still reacts when you feel rejected. The one who panics when someone pulls away. The one who feels unworthy when you fail. She lives in the tremble behind your smile. In the hesitation before asking for help. In the ache that says, if I was truly lovable, they wouldn't have left. But here's the truth that begins to dissolve that ache: your worth was never based on their ability to love you. Your worth is inherent. Untouched. Eternal. And the inner child already knows this. She's just waiting for you to believe it too. That belief is not a switch. It's a practice. A sacred return. A remembering. You may ask yourself, but why now? Why is this coming up again? It's because your nervous system is beginning to feel safe enough to remember. Healing doesn't happen when we force it, it happens when the soul finally whispers, now. Now is when you're ready to stop performing and start feeling. To stop fixing and start holding. To stop bypassing and begin listening to the younger you, the one who was never too sensitive, never too needy, never too much. She wasn't the problem. She was the mirror. The one who showed where love was missing. And you? You were never broken. You were breaking under the weight of unmet needs. And now that you're stronger, now that you're more conscious, you have the power to meet those needs yourself, with tenderness, with presence, with reverence. To truly reconnect with your inner child, you must first understand how the wound was formed. It wasn't always dramatic. Sometimes it happened in quiet moments. The day you brought home something you were proud of, but no one looked up. The moment you cried and were told to stop. The night you needed to be held, but were told to toughen up. These are not always the traumas that make headlines, but they are the ones that shape the deepest beliefs. That love is conditional. That emotions are dangerous. That your needs are too much. Over time, these micro-injuries calcify into a worldview: I must be perfect to be loved. I must be quiet to stay safe. I must disappear to belong. And the child who once reached out in innocence begins to withdraw in silence. Not because she is weak, but because she learned the world could not hold her softness. So she hides. And yet, even in hiding, she never stops hoping. Hoping you will come find her. Carl Jung believed that the child archetype holds the potential for renewal. That within our innocence lies the blueprint of our wholeness. But when that innocence is met with shame, neglect, or rejection, we begin to split. The psyche fractures. One part continues on, achieving, functioning, pretending. The other retreats inward, holding all the pain, all the unmet needs, all the questions. That's the wounded inner child. And if we never go back to retrieve her, we keep living from the fragment, not the whole. That's why so many adults feel hollow even after outward success. The promotion doesn't heal the abandonment. The relationship doesn't fill the emotional void. The spiritual practice doesn't reach the place where the child still waits. Only your presence can do that. Only your love can go that deep. So what does disconnection look like in everyday life? It's the person who panics when someone pulls away, not realizing it's the echo of a parent's inconsistency. It's the one who overworks and overgives, trying to prove they matter. It's the person who fears intimacy, because closeness once meant danger. It's perfectionism that hides deep shame. People-pleasing that masks fear of rejection. Emotional detachment that once kept you safe but now keeps you numb. These are not flaws. They are protective strategies. Survival codes. Brilliant adaptations from a time when love was not safe. But they are not the truth of who you are. They are the shell. And now, it's time to come home. Coming home to your inner child doesn't mean reliving the pain. It means rewriting the story. It begins with a simple shift, from judgment to compassion. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" you begin to ask, "What does the younger me need right now?" That question opens the door. Because what she needs isn't more performance. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs presence. She needs safety. She needs you to sit with her in the dark and not flinch. She needs you to say, "I'm not going to leave you like they did." And that is the deepest kind of healing, not when the pain disappears, but when the part of you carrying it no longer has to do so alone. Jung spoke often of individuation, the journey of becoming your whole self. And he understood that no integration is complete without turning toward the child within. Because that child is not just the beginning of your story. She is the keeper of your soul. She holds your creativity, your wonder, your truth. And most importantly, she holds the memory of what it felt like to be you before the world taught you to be someone else. Reconnection, then, is not regression. It's resurrection. It's the sacred act of bringing the forgotten self back into the light. And in doing so, you become whole, not by erasing what happened, but by loving the one who lived through it. This reconnection is not a one-time event. It's a relationship. A sacred one. And like all relationships, it begins with trust. Your inner child may not trust you at first. After all, how many times have you abandoned yourself to please others? How many times have you silenced your needs just to feel safe? But trust is built in presence. In consistency. In listening. So, sit with her. Ask her what she needs. Write to her. Let her write back. Reclaim the language of play, rest, and joy. Let her know she is allowed to take up space in your life now, not as a burden, but as a guide. Because the child you once were didn't just survive, she remembered. And her remembering is your return. There is a moment on this journey, a sacred threshold, when something inside you softens. When you realize that the love you've been seeking all your life isn't lost, it's simply been waiting. Waiting for you. Not your partner. Not your parent. Not your therapist. You. Because only you can become the one your inner child needed. Only you can sit beside her now and say, I won't rush you anymore. You don't have to prove anything to me. I will not abandon you, even when you're afraid, even when you cry, even when you're messy. This is the voice of reparenting, the act of becoming the inner mother or father you never had. It's not perfect. It's not always graceful. But it is powerful. Because each time you choose to soothe instead of scold, to listen instead of dismiss, to stay instead of run, you are changing everything. Not just for yourself, but for the generations before you who couldn't. And the ones who will come after you, who now won't have to. The inner child heals through safety, not speed. Through presence, not pressure. So give her what she always needed, consistency, permission, kindness. This is not self-indulgence. This is self-rescue. This is soul retrieval. And it shows up in the smallest moments. When you say no without guilt. When you rest without shame. When you allow yourself to cry without calling it weakness. When you choose a partner who sees your tenderness as sacred, not a problem. When you speak your truth, even if your voice trembles. These moments may feel small, but they are massive in the psyche. Because they tell the inner child, it's safe now. You don't have to hide. You are allowed to exist as you are. And in that safety, something miraculous begins to unfold. You start to feel things again. You start to laugh from the belly. You start to trust your instincts. You become curious instead of critical. Gentle instead of guarded. And as this new version of you takes root, life begins to respond. Relationships shift. Opportunities emerge. You attract people who feel like sunlight, not storms. Because when you become the source of your own love, you stop chasing it in all the wrong places. The wound no longer drives you. The wisdom does. And this is where the true transformation begins, not in the absence of pain, but in the presence of a love that no longer abandons you when pain arrives. Eventually, the line between you and your inner child begins to blur. You no longer feel like two separate beings, the wounded one and the healed one, but rather one integrated soul with many voices, all finally heard. Her fears become your signals for gentleness. Her joy becomes your compass. Her longing becomes your invitation to create the life she never got to live. And with each small act of love, each pause, each breath, each decision that says, I matter now, you repair the timeline. You send ripples backward through memory and forward into destiny. The adult you becomes the safe place the child never had. And that safety, emotional, spiritual, energetic, becomes your new foundation. One that no longer depends on others to validate your worth, because you've remembered something sacred. You were never unworthy to begin with. This new foundation allows you to live from resonance instead of reaction. You no longer need to win love by abandoning yourself. You no longer stay in spaces that feel like the past. You recognize the signs, the emotional flashbacks, the gut feelings, the internal alarms, and instead of overriding them, you honor them. You stop saying yes when your heart says no. You walk away when your spirit grows quiet. You rest when your body says it's tired. These are the ways you show her you're listening now. That the world may still be unpredictable, but you are consistent. And through this, your inner child doesn't just feel loved, she feels chosen. Chosen by you. And that choice, repeated again and again, becomes the medicine that rewrites everything. There will still be days when you forget. Days when the pain resurfaces. When you fall back into old patterns. That's not failure, it's invitation. Each setback is a sacred doorway back to self. Back to the soft parts. The tender places. The original you. And every time you walk through that door with kindness instead of shame, you deepen the healing. Because this path is not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming someone real. Someone whole. Someone who no longer hides her truth to be loved, but lets love rise from within her truth. That's the essence of the reparenting journey. You are not fixing yourself. You are finding yourself. You are remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget. So what does it look like to live from this place of inner reconnection? It looks like ease, not performance. It looks like joy that doesn't ask for permission. It looks like creating without fear of judgment, resting without needing to earn it, and loving without needing to be perfect first. It looks like walking into a room and not shrinking to fit it. It looks like speaking with clarity, even if your voice trembles. It looks like becoming a home for yourself, one where all parts of you are welcome. The loud ones. The shy ones. The angry ones. The grieving ones. Especially the parts that were once shamed into silence. Because now, you understand that those were not your flaws. They were your feelings. They were your signals. They were your soul trying to speak in a language that was never taught. Jung taught that the soul speaks in symbols, and the inner child is one of the most powerful symbols of all. She is the living embodiment of your most instinctive truth. Not your polished self. Not your productive self. But your pure self. And when you welcome her back, you don't regress, you resurrect. You become bold in your boundaries. Gentle with your shame. Clear with your needs. You no longer apologize for your sensitivity, you honor it. Because you've come to understand, what made you feel broken was not your sensitivity, but the absence of people who knew how to hold it. Now you know how. And that knowing is the beginning of emotional sovereignty. Emotional sovereignty doesn't mean you never get triggered again. It means when you do, you no longer collapse into self-abandonment. You pause. You breathe. You ask, what is my inner child feeling right now? And then, you respond with love, not reaction. You give her what she always needed, safety, validation, space. This is how trust is built. This is how the nervous system rewires. Slowly. Softly. Consistently. Not because you forced it, but because you chose it, day after day, moment after moment, in the silence of your own inner world. This is not performative healing. This is sacred repair. There is a quiet power in the one who has reparented herself. It's not loud. It doesn't need to prove anything. It simply radiates. You feel it in her presence, in how she listens without rushing, in how she speaks with warmth and clarity, in how she no longer seeks validation from people who cannot love her properly. She is no longer trying to be chosen, because she has already chosen herself. That is the energy of someone who has reunited with her inner child. She no longer carries the weight of becoming someone else to be loved. Instead, she lives as someone who remembers she was always worthy of love. This remembrance doesn't make her untouchable, it makes her real. Tender. Strong. Grounded. Awake. And this awakening ripples outward. You start to notice that your relationships change. The ones built on fear or performance fall away. And in their place, something softer arrives, relationships that feel safe, reciprocal, honest. Friendships where you don't have to hide your pain. Partnerships that honor your voice. You stop choosing people who recreate your childhood pain, and start choosing people who reflect your healing. You begin to parent your future not from lack, but from presence. You become the ancestor who breaks the cycle, not with violence, but with gentleness. Not by blaming, but by embodying. You become a walking permission slip for others to do the same. And most importantly, you begin to trust your joy. Because for so long, joy felt unsafe, fleeting, stolen, undeserved. But now, joy becomes your compass. The laughter you were once told was too loud now becomes your medicine. The rest you once felt guilty for now becomes sacred. The dreams you once buried under obligation now rise to the surface with breath and beauty. This is what it means to come back to the child within. It means you stop surviving and start living. Not in reaction to the past, but in resonance with your truth. And in that resonance, something miraculous happens. You don't just remember who you are, you become who you were always meant to be. So breathe. Let this final moment be an invitation, not to rush forward, but to return inward. Return to that small, sacred place inside you where your inner child still waits beneath the noise. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She doesn't need you to have all the answers. She needs your presence. Your consistency. Your softness. Let her see that you've come home, not as the version of you shaped by fear or survival, but as the you who is willing to love her unconditionally. Because when you do that, when you meet her with open arms instead of avoidance, something ancient begins to dissolve. The story of unworthiness. The weight of shame. The fear that you'll never be enough. It all begins to fall away in the light of your own devotion. This is the true miracle of healing. Not that you become someone new, but that you finally feel safe being who you already are. The truth is, you were never too much. You were never not enough. You were never unlovable. You were simply young, and no one taught you how to hold what you were feeling. But now, you are the one who gets to teach. You are the one who gets to model presence over perfection. Softness over shame. Truth over silence. You are the one who holds the map back to the heart. And every time you choose to love yourself where it once felt impossible, you carve a new path not just for you, but for every soul who comes after you. Let this be your knowing, your inner child is not your weakness. She is your wisdom. She is your spark. She is your sacred teacher. And when you walk hand in hand with her, you no longer walk from fear, you walk in truth. You walk in love. You walk in the kind of strength that doesn't dominate but liberates. And the world feels that. The world changes because of that. So, keep walking. Keep listening. Keep remembering. You are not alone. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are home. And that home is within you.